Hi there, welcome back to Japan, where I have got myself an interview with someone who is not in Japan, someone who I respect so dearly, Mr. Steve Gilmore, who, if you've been on our Discord servers, you'll know I've been hyping up. He is my musical sensei. He is the man who I've taken way too much influence from and has probably therefore caused me to be a little bit weird. Hello, Steve.
Oh, God, we're fucking doomed.
Yeah, we are. We were fucked from the beginning. So
If I'm the best you can do, we got serious problems.
well, I don't know who you learnt from, but well, I mean, just to paint the picture, because obviously you've been around for a while, and
I'm very.
that might be why you chose to go for an audio only interview. I don't know.
No, I just don't have the phone capacity, really. Certainly not if it was a sustained one. It would kill my phone.
I feel like this is like trying to explain to an elderly relative how to use Skype. So
Yeah, okay.
Just go for the audio.
Yeah, just log off, okay?
So
if all you're going to do is insult me, we can really get into it if you like.
well, I figured that's just how we communicate anyway, isn't it?
Well, that's also true.
So anyway, I mean, first of all, like I said, I just wanted to sort of paint a bit of a picture because I think most people in our circles, I mean, there's so many musicians who I know look up to you and who, from when I got to knowing you through you reviewing my music and reading the reviews that you did online, and that was kind of like after all the things you'd done before. I just kind of wanted to get a little bit of an idea and just sort of put this out there first of all. How did you first get into music, and I mean, what got you into doing music initially?
I think I've always loved music. I can't remember a time when it didn't actually fascinate me. And I lived through my early childhood. It was in the 1950s.
Yeah.
So I was hearing so much shit, it was untrue.
Yeah.
But then you got the odd kind of song, and it's always, for me, it's always been the song. It's what is actually being expressed that's the most important thing to me. Because I think that songs are messages from us to everybody else. And you can take what you want from a really, really good song. It's like a good book, you know, you can take so much from a good book.
Can you think of like a first song or maybe a first couple of songs where it felt like that? We were talking about this before, actually, recently on our Discord, about a first song that you felt, oh, actually, this feels like a message for me, where it just suddenly went, wait a second, this song actually speaks to me in a kind of direct way. Was there any sort of initial ones that you can remember that just were like the moment when it clicked?
I can't remember because, again, music has been such an integral part of my life.
Yeah.
It's never really assumed those kinds of proportions. You know, I liked things. I was often blown over by things. For instance, some of the guitar groups of the 1950s absolutely fascinated me. And I'm not talking about the Shadows. I'm talking about the Ventures and people like that, whose music I found very exciting, because you know what came through the music was the attitude of the time, you know. And for me, those early guitar groups, they certainly inspired me towards the guitar.
So
no doubt about it.
It's sort of more musical than lyrical, really. I think that's very true.
At the time, yes, because you know, lyrics in the 50s, you know, don't even go there. But
how many shoe-walks can you handle?
But obviously, once things started getting quite serious, you know, when you had records like Jan and Dean, talking about, you know, driving down the highway and getting themselves killed. to me, these were important tracks because they were talking for the first time ever about what your life is like.
What life could potentially be as well.
Exactly, yes. But the thing that really inspired me, of course, was the same thing that inspired millions of other people. When the Beatles came along and they started doing their thing, all of a sudden is what made me think, I can do this.
So what was the first time that you got hands-on, the first time that you got involved in music, the first thing where you went, okay, now I'm the creator, whether it actually be making your own music or not?
Actually, surprisingly enough, I was a DJ.
That does... Well, it shouldn't surprise me. I know enough about how eclectic your like weird skill set is that it shouldn't surprise me, and yet it kind of does. But I like that. Okay, paint the picture.
It's 1967, right?
Okay.
The summer of, and I'm living in a rat hole called Leicester, and I get a job in an ex-snooker club.
Oh my God! A Leicester snooker club.
Yes, it's been turned into a disco. And it was up a flight of stairs, real narrow, pokey stairs. And it was a good space. It had a bar. And, of course, the records were the thing that kind of got me into this. I was talking to the owner, and he was saying, well, you seem to know what you're talking about. Do you want to be a DJ? So I'm like, fuck yeah. And then I started to play all these records that I'd only heard about, I'd only read about, rather. I hadn't actually heard. And then I started hearing things like Little Red Book from Love.
Yeah.
Which was one of the most startling things to me. And then I started to hear things like Steve Miller, Song of Our Ancestors, which, if you've ever heard it, is like mind-blowing.
Yeah, that is one that I've come across. I mean, I must admit, it's one that I haven't re-listened to in quite a while, but it's one of those ones where someone says the name, and if you can't remember it from note for note, you just suddenly you get the image back of it, like the imprint that it leaves on you. There are songs like that.
To me, it was when Steve Miller was at his greatest, which is his first and second albums.
It didn't exactly go uphill, yeah.
Yeah, I liked his kind of pop side, Fly Like an Eagle. I liked all that stuff, but it didn't affect me like his first albums did.
We didn't have the identity, I don't think.
Yes. And, to me, that's the thing that I look for in music. This uniqueness. I mean, we all make music, and music is only composed of a few notes. Yeah. But how to make those notes unique is a thing that's always inspired me, always wanted me to hear more.
I think that's that to me. I mean, obviously, I've got as nowhere near the same experience that you've got, but I've got my own set of experience working a lot with music and working with yourself as well on various projects. I always try to get across this point to people when we do reviews on this channel, when we talk to people, that it's not just a case of I like this music, so I'm going to listen to this music, I'm going to listen to the best version of this music. It's a case of you want to be inspired by something all the time. Yes, the style of music or the sound of music you might like is a good place to go back to because you've got a good chance of being pleased by it. But what you really want is to listen to something that you don't expect to like and then go, okay, that caught me by surprise. That won me over. It's those surprises of something that achieves what you wouldn't expect. You want to hear that. You want to hear something which goes beyond what it should do, because it's easy to be pleased by what you like. And I think, like I said, I think this is something where we have a lot in common, because every time between what we've done with other people, we make our own music. And both of us, I think, always go for trying to do something that we would otherwise feel uncomfortable doing. We try to make something that pushes ourselves or surprises ourselves, often in the most ridiculous ways.
Yeah.
So
well, with you particularly, yeah.
Well, yes, I would if I did something normal, I think I would be bored. I think I would listen to it and throw it away.
I think you would too, yes. But again, that's why I prize artists, musicians, writers who are unique. They have their own voice. So no matter what the subject matter is that they're talking about, you hear that authentic voice.
Well, last week I did an interview, as I think you might have seen, I did an interview with Patrick Lew, who obviously you knew, you reviewed him as well. And the whole thing I say about Patrick Lew is, I'll be honest with you, I don't think I could sit down and listen to one of his albums from start to finish because it's just pure chaos. However, you know what? I would much rather listen to him go absolutely nuts and genuinely express whatever the hell is going on with Patrick Lew than listen to someone bang out a bunch of 4/4 time signature, I'm trying to sound like Nirvana stuff. You know, I would much rather listen to someone who genuinely sounded like they believed in what they were doing.
So here's a story from my past.
Yeah.
Can't remember when it was. Maybe 1976. I was working with Lemmy and a guy called Lucas Fox.
Okay.
And the office that I was working out of told me to go to this rehearsal space in Battersea and make sure that everything was set up and everything was going to go well.
Was Battersea as rough then as it is now?
Much worse.
Just wanted to paint the picture. Carry on.
Battersea was a very rough area, yes. But it was cheap.
Yeah.
Now, Lemmy had just been fired from Hawkwind. And, you know, I'd known Lemmy for years. You know, we kind of hung out in the same places. We were, I guess, friends. And when I went on tour with Hawkwind, you know, it's just part of that whole deal.
Yeah.
However, when they sacked him, and, you know, it's not something that was a surprise, it was surprising to me that he got on his feet and started making a difference kind of immediately. I always thought of Lemmy as being a bit kind of cavalier, and in a way he was.
But motivated.
But not when it came to music.
Yeah.
When it came to music, this guy was deadly serious, and he was one of the reasons why Hawkwind got to be so popular. It wasn't because of what they were doing; it's because of Lemmy and the way he presented himself. Anyway,
he knew what he wanted to be.
Yes. So the story is that I went to this demo studio in Battersea.
Yeah.
And Lucas was there setting up his drums. And Lemmy was there, and he had the speakers from Hawkwind's last tour, and they were all like psychedelic and, you know, kind of spacey. And I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on here, right? Because I knew Lucas kind of vaguely. I knew that he was a drummer.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what kind of drummer because I'd never heard him drum. And when him and Lemmy kind of fired it up and got going, I'm thinking, oh God, this is not going to end. This is not going to end nicely. It was so fucking loud. My ears were ringing for days off. And this was before they got a guitarist.
Oh, okay.
So I'm thinking, oh God, this is going to be a fucking disaster. Nobody's going to like this. And then I heard them with their first guitarist, Larry Wallace. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's just got fucking worse. And the problem is that I didn't actually understand what I was hearing.
Okay.
And you know, over the years, that kind of shocked me because I should have known what I was hearing because, you know, as I say, I go for the unique, not, you know, the normal. And what I was witnessing, unknown to me, was the start of an entirely new musical sound.
Now, I often, because I have less of a pull when it comes to sort of old school. I'm going to say metal, but I guess hard rock kind of. There's a bit of a crossover there. When it comes to old school artists of those styles, certainly from the 70s, I have a surprisingly small pool of artists that I really know much about. It isn't a style that necessarily works so much for me, but the one that I always come back to and I mention when something reminds me of that is Motorhead. And I think the reason is because I think what Motorhead did, and like you say, because of Lemmy, I think it kind of went beyond, I know it sounds so cliche, but it went beyond the genre because it was less about, you know, appealing to a certain style of playing. I mean, what they did was so simple. It was more about, well, look, we want to create a wall of energy and we're going to do that in the most efficient way possible. So it was more about producing a specific sound than any musical style, I'd say. I don't think they were trying to be metal or trying to be hard rock or trying to be whatever you want. I mean, they could have been, you know, sort of compared to so many things before and after. I think it was just about they knew what the sound was supposed to be. So I guess
well, the one thing that Lemmy was always certain about is what he wanted to do and how he wanted it to sound.
So you think it was all completely by design? Because it sounds that way.
Well, again, I say, you know, I mean, I didn't really understand what he was trying to do. But once I heard the first Motorhead album, I understood completely what he wanted to do.
It was hard to avoid.
It was really hard to avoid because it was genius. It was genius. Yeah. So simple as to be untrue, you know. Yeah. But what a fucking racket, you know.
I mean, I prefer. I mean, I would gladly hold things like Motorhead over things like Black Sabbath because to me, Black Sabbath it kind of gets a little bit lost in the concept. It's like it doesn't seem to land for me. It never feels like it's actually as powerful as it claims to be. Whereas Motorhead is so stripped back and it's just like, well, this is what we are doing, and they do it.
Well, the overarching thing for me here, over and above the music, and as you say. He kind of transcended to music because, to be honest, the music is just, you know, basic. Never anything that really stood out, except maybe Ace of Spades because it's such a brilliant song.
Yeah.
But it was the thing that the attitude that he spoke to more than any other thing that he did in his whole life was individualism.
Which is a form, you know, personal identity. You know, this is what I want to do. I don't care if it is what people do. This is the sound that I want to go for. This is, I guess I was thinking, this is what I feel, and I'm going to make that into a sound. Which is what music should be, and yet people tend to start from, well, this is what I feel. What genre matches what I feel, and then I will work within the confines of that genre. That, I think, is the problem with so many other musicians, is that they're not looking to just make the sound that best speaks to what they want. They're looking to make a sound that is already acceptably marketable.
I think that's one of the reasons why we bonded so quickly at the very beginning, because I think we both recognise that spirit of, well, I'm going to do it my way and you can all fuck off.
Yeah, I think the first song you ever reviewed of mine was probably He Stole My Girl, which is like somewhere between pop, hip-hop and punk all at the same time, with synthesizers, all kinds of stuff thrown in, and lyrics about burning someone's house down.
Well, it was the lyric that actually got me, and the music kind of came, you know, along second. But once I clicked onto the music, there was no question that you were highly individualistic. I hadn't heard anybody like you, and to this day, I haven't heard anybody like you.
That's what I want to keep it as, so I appreciate that.
I agree with that. When I was making drums and bass back in the day, I all kinds of people saying, "No, that's not drums and bass." But you know, to me, I didn't fucking care. Call it whatever you like. It was music that I made that I was proud of.
Well, I remember because we did a range of. I'm glad to say that in the years that we worked together in London, we did a range of different sessions that were very different. From working with a couple of paid customers, working on your music, working on my music, working with other people who we knew. I got to see you work in many different environments, and what was really interesting is that you had a very set way of working. I mean, there was kind of like there was no fuss. You knew exactly what you were doing. It was simple. It was stripped back. And yet, with every artist you worked with, there was a really clear understanding that your methods were more simple so as to give them more room to do what they wanted to do. It's like whatever they wanted to do, you were able to accompany that. Whereas so many, I look at a lot of younger studio engineers I've worked with, and I don't mean this just to be sort of cruel to them, but as a general, they'll come in, and if an artist comes in with an original idea, they'll more tell them how to steer that back to the industry standard way of approaching it. And I think the thing that made your style so interesting is, like I say, you knew what you did, but what you did was just the method by which you recorded, mixed, and mastered, and produced. You were more interested in, okay, what am I... Because even when you work with me, you were telling me to do things where I thought, well, I hadn't thought to do that. And yet when you said it, I was like, actually, that's very much me. And, you know, it's like, I hadn't thought of doing that, but you've actually pinpointed exactly what I wanted to do before I'd even thought of it. And I think that is the thing that's missing from production now, is that people are trying, again, they're trying to make it fit a certain sound rather than trying to express the artist's voice.
But hit records are never made that way. Memorable songs are never made that way. Memorable songs are made with pain and suffering.
Honesty usually is pain and suffering, but a form of reality, however comically expressed. A form of reality has to be in there.
Having said that, I've also written some of my best songs very quickly, you know, because I think my best songs are probably not mine. They probably come from some other source that I don't know about.
I think
because they strike me as being, well, yeah, that might be something that I think, but you took it a whole lot further.
I think that's something that I've read a lot of songwriters have said the same thing. It's certainly something I've had as well, is that you can sit down and write a song, but there are certain songs that just appear at the right time and they come into your head fully fledged, and then you have those few seconds to write it down before it leaves. You know, the lyrics, the tune, the arrangement all just suddenly arrives in your head at one time and says, all right, I'm here, write me down or I'm gone. Yeah, I think that's something that any music writer worth their own salt can know, and you have to perfect a technique to be ready for it. Which is difficult.
Yeah, they do. I missed many opportunities like that, but you know, I got some. I'm happy with that.
Well, I want to bring you back a little bit, because obviously we mentioned, so we had 1967. You're DJing in Leicester in an old pool snooker club. 1976, you're working with Lemmy after he comes off the back of Hawkwind and everything. What happened in those 9 years to get you from that place to that place, get you from discoing to, well, not discoing, but DJing to working with these people? What was that transition?
Well, obviously, because I was living in a shithole, I was a lot like you. I don't care. I was a lot like you. I used to come to London because that was the beacon for me.
Yeah.
You know, I lived in this shithole, like you lived in some shithole.
I lived in many shitholes, my friend. One of my places that I lived with a Korean girlfriend at one time, my friend used to actually nickname it the shoebox, because it was just one small white rectangle. It was like living in prison. So yeah, I've lived in some shitholes.
I know those shoeboxes.
So you're commuting in from your shithole in Leicester.
And at the same time as I'm doing DJing, I'm getting into hanging out with bands. And the bands that I was fascinated with at the time were, in fact, kind of multiracial bands.
Because this is a big part
you know,
of what you did. You worked with some really quite eclectic styles. I'll let you get on to that point, though. Sorry, carry on.
Well, initially I started working with a jazz band who became a kind of big band, soul band.
Yeah.
And they had a whole bunch of black singers. And I thought, I can do that. So I used to stand in with them. And
when you say
the music was so
with them, what were you specifically doing with them?
Well, first of all, I was basically hanging out.
Oh, okay.
And then whenever I got the chance, I got up to sing.
Oh, okay. So, because obviously, just to clarify for anyone watching this, obviously, I think most notably you've worked as a producer and you've worked in the studio, but obviously you are an artist in your own right.
Well, this is when I was 17.
Yeah, but I mean, it's something that throughout your career you have also been a performer. You're not just a studio hand. You're someone who knows how to step into the fray and actually be that person on the other side of the screen as well.
Yeah, I've been a musician my whole entire life. I'll probably die a musician.
You will.
You know?
No, you will. You will. I promise you will. You'll die with a triangle in your hand. So okay. So you're up there. You're singing with them some nights. You're giving it a little bit of your own vibe.
So I'm starting to get more and more obsessed. You know, thinking, you know, I can do this. I can do this. And obviously that. I was 17, I was too young, and it took me a while to decide to actually move to London, and I moved to London in, I think, 1969, end of 1969.
Okay.
And I went to live in a place called Ladbroke Grove.
The Grove.
Which at the time it had just had like massive race riots.
Yes.
It was a known gangster hangout.
Yeah.
But it was cheap, so therefore all the poor kids went there. And I was lucky enough to link up with a group of people that kind of helped me to find my way, you know. And in between that, I started to learn how to play the guitar.
Yeah.
And after a while, I turned myself into a busker, which is something that I've done all my life because I enjoy that. I think I get more joy out of playing on the street than I do playing gigs.
We've both done this actually. Now this is an interesting thing because busking is well, I mean, I'll come to this later, and obviously how we met. Well, you know, how we went from knowing each other to meeting, and I'll come to the issues of like things like Camden and stuff later. However, busking is something that we've both done. You've done, I think, significantly more than I have, but I would agree that I think certainly when I did it and from where you did it, I think there's very little which is better for the soul, if you want to use such a dramatic word. Because not only are you playing free of any restrictions, you just play what you want to play, but you are literally, you've got like you're window shopping listeners, and you can grab them and pull them over, and it's so much more rewarding because you sing directly to one person, but you don't know who that person is. You just have to try and win them over as they pass by, and then eventually you can build up a little semicircle.
It certainly is one of the most exacting things I've ever done.
It's very instant, very instantaneous.
Because the hardest lesson to learn of all is to put your everything into it. Yes. Because if you don't, you won't stop anybody.
Well, unless you go and start playing a bunch of Oasis covers.
And you know that I'd never kind of do that because that's not the kind of Oscar.
We'd both jump off of Camden Bridge before we did that, yeah.
Well, even when I'm doing covers, I don't do covers because I want to cover that particular song.
You do it because you can add something to it.
I can make it my own.
Well, I mean, because you did, I know from my experience with you, you did at least one particularly notable Bob Marley cover, and I remember we did that in one particularly fateful and very interesting day. I think one of the days I will never forget. We went to a black community centre in Kilburn, and
Oh God.
that
I remember.
that was, I mean, that was tense because obviously we had Tommy feckin' Doyle with us, the
Yeah.
legendary. If anyone's been to Charing Cross Station, you'll oh no, not Charing Cross. Which one was it? Waterloo. He was always playing outside. This guy is like legendary in London as a busker, and he is as Irish as can be. So as you can imagine, nothing he says is censored, and he managed to say something which was borderline racist, pretty much set off the bat, and luckily got some laughs for it. But yeah, I remember playing that, and I remember you walked up and you went to do a Bob Marley song, and you did this. I thought this really cool little, not a speech, but like an introduction to the song where you explained, okay, this is a black song, this is a reggae song, this might not be my song in most people's books, but music is for everyone, and I've got something that I've got a connection to this song, and I want to perform it my way, and I loved that. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that's the sort of message that we need more of this in the world. The sort of idea that things are personal rather than group identity related. So yeah, you've always been someone who I don't think you play music with borders. You play just whatever means something to you.
And do you remember the chill that came in the air that night?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was kind of. I mean, it was standoffish. I mean, I don't mean that in an aggressive way, but you could see certainly that we were playing to an audience who kind of felt a bit uncomfortable about our presence.
Yeah, yes. And I think that was one of the reasons that inspired me to do that particular song, because the point I was making is that Bob Marley wrote this song as a redemption song. And he didn't write it as a black redemption song.
No.
He wrote it as a redemption song for all of us.
Human redemption song, I think.
Yes, yes. And, he didn't see things in black and white, so why should you?
I mean, of the three of us who went, I mean, as far as I remember, it was the three of us. It was Tommy Doyle, yourself, and me. Now, Tommy just went up and did his thing old school, and I think that was interesting because he brought a sort of traditional value. Fair enough. I tried to play a bit with comedy, tried to be a bit funny. At points it worked, at points it didn't. It wasn't a total dud, but it was one where I kind of felt like I was having to try and, me and the audience were dragging each other through rather than necessarily meeting eye to eye. The interesting thing is when you played with like I say, I think there was a sort of a real, almost a confrontational communication to it. It was very honest, and you spoke to them directly. It was really you just speaking to them, saying, "This is why I'm playing this song, and I'm going to play this song to you." And I think that worked, and I think that honesty in music, that sort of directness, is really powerful. So obviously, we got to this point now.
But that's something that's been missing in music for a long, long time. When I was growing up, the music that was inspiring me was music that was inspiring in and of itself.
Yeah.
You just don't hear that kind of material anywhere at all in the world that we're in.
Do you think it's difficult to be inspiring? And I say this for two reasons. One, of course, is the fact that it's harder to be original now with more and more music. And since obviously music's devolved into, be it for better or for worse, a situation where the record companies don't so much hold the keys to the gate, just everyone can become famous online. You've kind of got an oversaturation of music in the market. Music's lost its value, it's lost its individuality. Although we get to hear more, we get to hear less of any particular it was not censored, but sort of it doesn't have to reach a certain level to become famous anymore. Could it be that? Could it be the fact that people as general maybe are more complacent now? Do you think there's any reason why music does? Because it is true, there's less truly inspiring moments where music makes you go, "Wow, that's going to be legendary." Do you think there's a reason for that?
Yeah. The reason is because there are no outlets. If you think about this, the problem is the same, but in this as it is between politics in the world.
Yeah,
there's two sides. There's not one side. In other words, human beings. There's two sides.
Yeah,
and the side that controls all the outlets are the people that brought us to this very, very sorry state.
Sort of divisive state.
Yes. And I, in particular, blame record companies and that whole A&R thing for basically selling out what wasn't theirs to sell in the first place.
So obviously I know that we kind of know what we're talking about here, but just to make it a bit clear for anyone listening, what do you think are the sort of values and narrative that they've been pushing? Just so we can explain this.
Well, basic consumerism for a start.
So the devaluation of the message.
Yes, the whole point about what happened in the 60s, and I'm talking about the early 60s, 63 to 66 or 67, was probably the freest time in music that I've ever known. People were free to do pretty much whatever they felt was right.
Because there was no established standard at that point for what contemporary music would be.
Music business. The music business did not exist. And then all of these fucking pirates clambered on board and started selling our culture back to us. And while doing that, they were also dictating what we should listen to. So to me, the really important records of the 60s and the 70s were the ones that went completely against that particular narrative. And obviously a lot of very powerful music came out of that.
So you feel that they were building what was to come. There wasn't if you like the framework, but by rebelling against what existed at the time, they created the framework for what would be in the future.
Well, money and power, which is basically what we're talking about, doesn't sit very well with creativity.
No, but you need both to work together in order to create something that can be distributed to the masses and yet still have a quality worth speaking of.
You do indeed, which is why that initial kind of cottage industry that was started in the 60s is the model to go for.
Yeah.
You only have to look at a label like, say, Creation to kind of understand that if you can keep it small like that, you can dictate the pace.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember that Creation were one of the biggest record labels in the 90s, and yet they were totally independent. So,
well, as we move to this point, let's move the story forwards a little bit as well. So we've got you, 1976. You've been working with Lemmy. Where does
I'd also been touring with Hawkwind in my own right.
Well, you did a lot of things, I think, from what I know of what you've told me before, you did a lot of things in the 70s and 80s. There was a sort of a big transition where you got more involved in a lot of creative sides as well.
Yes.
What sort of developed after this?
But to finish off that whole period, that whole Hawkwind period, I started touring with them. I toured with them between 73 and 76.
Yeah.
And it culminated in an album that I made with Michael Moorcock and another guy, which was my first real attempt at production.
Yeah.
And it was like big deal production, 24 track, 48 track studios,
Yeah.
Which at the time were like state of the art.
Well, yeah, it was beyond what anyone really thought was necessary at the time, I think.
Absolutely, and that proved to be so to me as a producer. The more I worked on this particular album.
Can I just say before you continue the story, I've seen one of your project files on your computer about 5 or 6 years ago when we were in London. I have never seen so many tracks on one computer screen in my life. You are someone who is not restrained by the need to vertically scroll down. I have never seen someone embrace the need for multiple tracks as much as you. I thought I went a bit over the top, but yeah, you certainly are someone who knows how to layer up sounds. So
in that way, I'm very old school.
Yeah.
I take lessons in that from Phil Spector.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah,
because Phil Spector had, to me, the best rock sound ever.
Yeah, I mean, well, that was kind of proved in his success. I mean, despite what we might think of him as a person, his success was, it was there to see and it was there to hear. I mean, I don't think it was...
The records he made were life-changing.
Totally.
For a lot of people.
It's difficult. There's no way to deny that. I mean, just the proof is there. It's one of those things. It's like questioning the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. The proof is there. It's any opinion against them is going to wind up being a minority opinion. So I think that's a fairly safe one to agree with. It's
irrefutable.
So you're working on producing your first album. Then you're working on producing your first record.
So that kind of belly flopped. It got terrible reviews. It really didn't sell very much, although it's been selling steadily over the years.
You mentioned
yeah, it's been going on for 40 years now.
What's the record called? Just so we can reference it, because I remember seeing the record with your name on it, and I really enjoyed that.
Michael Moorcock and the Deep Fix, and the album's called New World's Fair.
Okay, yeah, I would recommend it. It's not exactly one of those ones that people are going to probably find on Spotify, but I would recommend anyone give it a little look. It's a good bit of history to certainly get your ears into, especially considering you've just heard one of the producers say that it got terrible reviews. So
one of the problems of course, was that everybody on it was so inextricably entwined with Hawkwind that people expected Hawkwind. Got a very different, very eclectic thing that was actually quite difficult to get a hold of. And the reason that it was difficult to get a hold of was that it was 3 separate albums. Mine, Graham Jarnock, the other guy, and Mike Moorcock. And it was all kind of cobbled around a Mike Moorcock theme. At the time, I was 26. I was totally involved with that. I thought it was the best thing since, sliced bread. And of course, I was young, I was naive, and I didn't really think it through. But what it did do is it triggered this desire in me to be a producer. Not just to make music, but to make it sound fucking awesome.
Because production, I mean, a lot of people don't understand. And like I say, I like to make sure that when we do things on this channel, I like to explain it in a way that it's not just jargon that people can understand. And I will be coming back to do a video later about what the actual deal is with production, what production really entails. But just to quickly... sorry, you can
just a minute. I really do like your videos on compression and, stuff like that. This is something that is... you should do that, man. It's good.
Man. I'm going to do more of those because, like I say, I mean, the thing that really pisses me off is that I think there's some attitude that, I mean, I'm not so concerned about kids learning music because kids can learn things very easily. My concern is you've got a load of adults who are really into music and they, through no fault of their own, you talk about a time signature, you talk about a key change, you talk about compression. They have no idea what you're talking about, but the thing that you're talking about is really simple. And it's just because if they Google it or if they ask for information, they get given this wall of jargon. And it's like, well, how do I make sense of this? So for me, I really want to make it so that, it's like open source. I want it to be so that anyone knows what music is made of. You don't have to know the jargon. You don't have to know what a semi-note... I don't care. You don't have to know what any of this stuff is. I just want you to listen to a piece of music and go, okay, I see what makes that. I see what constructs that. And then you can deconstruct it for your own pleasure. So this is what's really important to me, is there's a whole generation of people who think they have to learn this stupid terminology. And don't get me, it's fine if you're a classical musician, don't get me wrong, but, you know, it's not necessary for 99.9% of people who just want to know how to make some music or just, you know, learn how to understand what they're listening to. So, it's something I really want to get into, is doing more of those.
One of the problems in my mind is that cut and paste. Cut and paste is a curse.
Yeah.
Loops are a curse.
They have their place, but they're overused.
No. They always lead you into bad ways. Every single time. If I'm going to use a loop, and I often do, I'm going to change it so it actually fits the music that I'm working with.
Can I just point out, you actually had a bad effect on me in that you have a bad thing. You have a big thing against drop-ins. Now, just for anyone who's listening, a drop-in is where you are recording something, and say you record, like you're recording maybe, let's say, the guitar, and you record you've got a 3-minute song. You record the first 1 minute 40 seconds, and it's perfect. And in about 1 minute 40 seconds, there's just a note you don't like. So you stop the recording. And then you restart the recording from that point. So basically you're starting a new recording, dropping in at that point, but it sounds like you're just continuing the same recording. So that the person listening, they cannot hear the difference. And Steve always told me when we're working together, has to be a start to finish single performance, which is definitely not what most artists do. But as a result, I've kind of now got myself into the phase where when I'm doing anything like that, I do veer towards that, for better or for worse. So,
well, for me, it's about honesty, right?
I think that's fair.
If you're going to deliver, you're going to deliver now. Not, you know, let's do it 20 times.
And then immediacy of it.
It's the honesty of it, because what you're doing is you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. There's no trickery involved with it.
Well, one of the things that I often did is... like, for example, with some of the singers who I produced, and it's usually the singers who are the biggest problem, I would get them in to do a song, and I would make them do the vocals, even if it was perfect. I'd make them do it repeatedly, just to see if I could find a variation in their voice that hinted at more honesty in one performance than another, because it's very difficult to get your head around sometimes what someone's doing, especially if they're not maybe in the studio, they're not in the same mood they were when the song was written. You know, you need a lot of material to sift through to really find what the essence of the song is. And sometimes you'd find there's a performance where they just sort of, there was one line where maybe they were kind of warming up to it, and then halfway through the song, the last half, they nailed it. And that's actually quite common. Like the last half of the song, they nailed the performance. You could feel that they just suddenly started to come to them. And so you take the last half, cut that out, keep it, and then, you know, sift through to performance number 12 or something and keep the first half of that. I think sometimes for me, it's more about the outcome. It's more about how it is for the listener. Even if the performance that you're presenting is a cut and shut between two performances for the artist, if you think that you've got the most overall accurate representation of what the artist is trying to do. But that's difficult. I mean, is there an element of dishonesty if a producer is picking what they think is the most honest performance?
Of course not. If there was, and if there was a problem with that, then the artist, it's their duty to say, no, that's not what I think.
But they don't. You know this as well as I do. The artist rarely stands up for their music as much as they should.
They don't often, and it's especially worse if they have some kind of respect for you. Because you know that, you know, the things that you have to tell them are probably hurtful. But you still have to tell them, you know, well, actually, you're not singing in time, you're not playing in time, and maybe you should think more about why you're in the studio.
Can I ask you a little question? Because this is just on this subject, just as we're going on this little detour. One of the things I found most fun working with artists in studios, obviously the contract will be very different each time. Sometimes it will just be, look, here's the contract, just get through this, and it, we'll pay you. Sometimes there'll be a lot of stipulations related to the quality of the content. Now, you know as well as I do, you'll go into a studio with some artists who bring an ego with them, and they'll do something, and you'll know that was shit. No one's going to accept that, and you shouldn't accept it. But they will defend themselves against the accusation on the basis that they know they're perfect.
Yeah.
What do you do with these people? Because my approach is usually quite confrontational. It's usually a case of, well, look, I'm not putting that out with my name on it.
Yeah, but I'm a producer, and the point of being a producer is that you produce, not that you are.
So you
that you produce. Yes. In other words, yeah, I might not like what you're doing, but that isn't my job. My job is to produce it.
Well, this is interesting because I, in one sense, on principle, I agree with you. On principle, I agree that you should that's when you should shine. So I guess the question is, sorry, actually, I meant to say this earlier and I didn't. So sorry, let me go back to this because I was saying I wanted to give a layman's term of what a producer actually is. A producer is a very wide range of things. I mean, first of all,
God, it's impossible to pin down.
Well, I'll cover some of the basics. I mean, first of all, I mean, they are to a song what a director is to a movie. They don't write it, but they are the ones who are responsible for how it's presented. Things like they should be, really. Like the effects, every little tiny effect that you subliminally are not hearing, but is created, is produced by the producer. But it's beyond that. They also communicate with the artist like a director would with an actor on a movie set to get the best performance out of them. They have to be there saying, well, look, okay, I don't think that's what you should be doing. I think that you've betrayed your own song. I think, you maybe wrote that with emotion, but since you wrote that, it's become something that you've catalogued, and now your ego's taken over because you no longer feel what you felt when you wrote that, and now you're trying to perform it through your ego. And this is where I've come into confrontation with some artists, not too many, but occasionally it's like, I think you're lying to yourself with this performance. I think that this performance is now you're trying to, maybe you wrote that song when you were feeling quite sensitive and now you're trying to swag over the sensitivity. It's like, no, you wrote that as a sensitive song. Deliver it as a sensitive song, or it ain't the song that you wrote.
Once again, it comes down to how honest do you think you are. And one of the best places to discover that is in a recording studio that you're paying the costs for.
Yeah, because you kind of have to confront your own insecurities then, don't you?
Absolutely, because all of a sudden you realise that if you don't come to the right decision, then you're going to cost yourself a ton of money.
You have to live with what you did in this moment, in this room. You have to live with it outside this room.
Absolutely. So although the period between 1976 and the time that I first started getting into music on computers, I was restricted as a producer because I could only use studios.
Yeah.
And obviously my time was restricted. But that was a good thing because it made me take stock of how to save people money in recording studios.
Made you more pointed.
Yes. So now when I want to do something in a studio, and of course we've all got studios now, when I want to do something in a studio, I know exactly what I want to hear. And I know exactly the way that it should be coming out.
Yeah, and that's sometimes hard to put across to the artist, is that you are the translator between their creation and the reality of it actually being delivered.
This is going to come as no surprise to you whatsoever. One of the most difficult artists I've ever had to work with is our friend Freddie.
Okay, I'm going to paint the picture. And by the way, as I should point out that obviously the audience can see me, but you are just a series of images of you that I'm going to put on the screen. I'm going to highlight Freddie now. I'm going to put Freddie into this so that they can see him as well. Freddie is everything that you would imagine from his image. He is. I'm sure he won't be offended by me saying he is Italian born, although he claims to be from Brighton in England. And he very much lives through a persona. He lives through an image. He is quite possibly one of the most fantastic human beings at presenting himself I've ever seen. I've never seen someone who's been so capable of crafting an image. I actually think that what he does with his image is what we talk about with music. He manages to produce this image that is just a bespoke work of art, and he does it by, he gets his clothes from secondhand shops, various things, he changes them, alters them. His whole image is a crafted art.
It's amazing. He is in fact a work of art, and he created all of it.
He's a walking work of art. I mean, as you said, you had a photography group come up to you once while you were walking down the street because they just wanted to stop him and take pictures of him. It was a group of like amateur photographers who were part of like a photography club. The man has tourists taking pictures of him every second of the day, even though he's not known as a celebrity, despite his own assertions. He's stopped and he's photographed regularly. But the truth is, and again, I say this as someone, I've had massive fallings out with him. I mean, you remember we had a huge falling out. Me and Freddie have been both best friends and worst enemies at equal times. He is somewhat confined by his own image of himself. He has an ego. I don't know how this exists. It's been about 4.5 years since I last saw him. We've spoken a little bit, but he's very attached to the grandiose appearance that he's presented, and thus he has to back that up with his character. And I think that leads to a slight disingenuous quality. Not to say that he isn't capable of supporting it, just that it's sometimes, what he's trying to present is so grandiose that without any real fame and riches, it's very hard to back it up. And his music it's good. It's good. But it is of a style. It is not as grandiose as his appearance. I would say that if I was to rate it, his ability to present himself is an 11 out of 10. His ability to make music is a 7 or 8.
Yeah, I agree. But Freddie, like a lot of people, is a man born out of time.
Well, yeah. One look at him paints that picture.
He should have been born. He should have been active in the 70s. If he was active in the 70s, he would have learned his lessons, and he would have progressed. And I believe he could have been the star that he wants to be.
Well, here's the problem.
And certainly, as far as his music goes, it's not really always something that I like. But I like that kind of classic, and it inspired me to work on his last album.
Well, if I could just interject for a second, because here's a thing that I hear regularly. Like, for example, Freddie, born out of time. Patrick Lew, who we talked about before, he talks about being born out of time. I often feel, and I don't say this because I see what I'm about to mention, but I feel if I was born 10 years earlier, maybe I would have gained some success. I remember speaking to some record executives who I work quite close with, who were actually very high up, one particular at Universal, who said, yeah, if you'd given me this 10 years ago, this would have done a hell of a lot better than it can do now.
I agree with that. I agree with that. You were a man ahead of your time.
Well, here's the problem. Here's the issue. That I feel like even for myself, I feel when an artist says that, there is a degree of excuse that isn't acceptable there. Because, for example, if we take Patrick Lew, and Patrick doesn't draw any excuses for himself. He's very honest about this, and I think you would agree if I said this. The problem is that he says that he's born out of his time, and if he was making his music in the 90s, he would be much more successful. And based on things like Melt Banana, I believe him. I think that sort of chaos sound had its place in time. But would he be doing that if he hadn't heard that sound before his time growing up? Would he have invented that without hearing it? Would Freddie be dressing in this grandiose way and doing this classic rock if he hadn't grown up with classic rock having already happened?
Yes, I agree with both of those statements.
It's easy to be the archetype of something. It's hard to be the creator.
Patrick just followed kind of slavishly the whole grunge thing. And that's no disrespect to Patrick. I like the guy.
He would accept that. I know he would accept that. Yeah.
And the same is true of Freddie. His music is solid. He knows what he wants. And believe me, producing with him, is a struggle because we fight a lot.
I've been in the studio with him. Yeah, I know. It ain't easy. He doesn't accept any other opinions. He's a true auteur.
But the fighting gave us a great album, what I consider to be a great album.
Yeah.
So, I don't care. What I care about is delivering the product.
So one of the things that really intrigues me then is, so you've got to this point, you've produced your first record, and then you're sweeping forwards from here now. What do you do next? I mean, where do you go from producing this first record? Because like you said, it wasn't exactly the hit that you wanted it to be, or maybe would have hoped it would have been.
No, I was always aware that, I was kind of flogging a dead horse. It's a good album, don't get me wrong, okay? I am proud of it. Yes, I made some mistakes, but I am proud of it, and I think Mike is too. Certainly when I've spoken to him in the past, we haven't had a problem. And I'm still friends with all three of them.
Yeah.
So, it's no big deal. But I was a very different young man. I was naive, I was ill-informed, and I didn't know enough about what I was actually taking on.
Yeah.
And it was the next few years that really gave me the experience I needed to be able to move on from where I was. The problem is that the next few years were incredibly difficult.
In what way? What happened specifically that made that so difficult?
Well, basically, I got involved in the wrong side of it. All of a sudden, I started to think, well, I could be a manager. And
that happens to us all. It's a very different thing.
And I'd already been told by people, oh, you should give it up, you'll never get anywhere. The normal stuff.
Yeah, there's always someone telling you can't do it.
And I was young enough to believe that they knew what they were talking about because they were older than me, they were more experienced than me. And I had this intimation that the music business was a very different thing to playing music.
Yeah.
So I started getting involved with different bands. I worked with the 101ers for a while. And then a few other things where I was recording on spec. Do you know what that means?
I'm not 100% sure what you mean, no.
Well, you go into a recording studio with somebody and just hope that you could sell it on to somebody else.
Oh, okay, yeah.
In other words, not a very good way of making money or having a living. No,
that basically revolves around you not being sure what you're going to make at all.
And then as time went on, I realized that although I loved music and I loved, what I was doing, I hated the music business. I mean, I hated it. And it really came to the crunch when in 1980, I with my partner, we found a band called The Specials.
Yeah.
And The Specials really appealed to me because of my own history. When I was young, 17, 18, 19, I was surrounded by West Indians.
Yeah.
And the music that I loved more than anything else was ska. And here we are in 1980, and these guys are playing authentic ska.
Well, this is a big defining part of what you did.
And I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I thought, Jesus, man, this is the answer to my prayers.
Yeah.
Here's a band that not only does music that I absolutely love, but they embody the spirit that I was in at that particular moment in time. In other words, fuck racism.
Yeah.
And the reason that I was particularly enamored by them is the fact that they were black and white working together. And I thought that was just beyond belief. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
So I convinced my partner, who was managing the Damned at the time, to take them on board. He went off and did a tour with the Damned in America that lasted like 3 months. And I spent that 3 months putting the band through, basically, the music business, selling them on, dealing with record contracts, and dealing with the band. And the band were always they were solid. They knew what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was impressed by that. It wasn't about music, it was about what they were doing.
Yeah.
But, like all things, once money comes into the equation, everything changes.
Yeah.
And I mean everything.
I think that's something you learn very quickly, is that there is that comparison between the financial and the creative. People are swayed. They come in for the creative and they switch to the financial very quickly.
Well, especially on a managerial level, which I was. I wasn't producing the financial. Their records. I was actually trying to make them. And as we got more and more into recording contracts, and there was like a massive kind of bidding war for the specials. People were offering huge amounts of money, and I think it went to people's heads. And when they finally signed the deal that they signed, I think it was with Chrysalis, the deal was that they would be a record company.
Yeah.
That they have complete choice about what artists they chose, and what singles they put out, and I was all for that. I thought that was a brilliant idea. The only problem that I saw with it is that you were going to make all these people stars, and you weren't going to hold on to them.
That's an interesting point, to be honest.
To me, the point was, well, you build a movement.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that if you just produce a business deal, the business deal doesn't necessarily last. It's not necessarily timeless. However, if you build something more substantial, something that has more of a message behind it. I know it sounds so twee and so maybe even hippie, but if you do build a general connection, a genuine cause between your artists, a unifying value, then they stay together. You keep your record company. You look at most of the record companies who are famous for, if we look at, I know you've got a relative knowledge of hip hop as well. I mean, you look at hip hop artists, look at like record labels, like, freaking Suge Knight, who's like the most horrifying human being ever to exist. He kept all his artists together by basically keeping them all unified, by making them feel they were all connected, even though his message was pretty evil.
Yep. The same is true of Peter Grant.
Yeah, there you go. If you have that message, if you have that unifying.
If the way that you keep things under control is to be a gangster, and that's one way of doing it. If you keep control by saying no, that's another way of doing it. And one of the things that I particularly admired about Doug Smith, who was Hawkwind's manager, was that he said no.
Yeah.
When record companies were trying to make him do stupid things, he said no. Why should I? This isn't your thing. This is our thing.
So you've had this situation with the specials,
well, that really impressed me.
Yeah.
Because it kind of led me to live my life by the same measure. And just say no. It's dead easy. Just say no. So anyway.
So the specials have done this somewhat more, shall we say, more fiscal approach. They've gone for a very financial approach to things.
The specials had like 5 top 10 singles in a row, straight away, in the first 6 months of their existence. Obviously, one of those was the Specials, but they also produced Madness, Selector, English Beat, and lots of other bands.
Something
right?
of a sound came out of it.
It was a two-tone revolution. It was.
Yeah.
The problem is that as time went on and these bands got more and more famous, there was more and more money to go around. And in the end, it led to the band splitting up.
Okay.
And it led to the band splitting up because most of the band forgot why they were there.
So it became a business over a form of expression?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
My prime mover in that whole experience was a guy called Jerry Dammers, who was the main songwriter, and he was incredibly forceful guy, because he stood by his beliefs. He said, "This is what I believe we should be. This is what I believe we should do,"
Yeah.
and it was his vision that created that whole two-tone thing. But as soon as it started to get to the point where there was so much money sloshing around, the rest of the band decided that they kind of ditched those principles.
Yeah.
and kind of get into the whole music business thing. And that forced Jerry to leave.
So
that wasn't his dream.
So where did this send you, though?
And then he went, hold on a minute, this is the best part of all, because then he went on to make one of the all-time pop singles that changed history. That didn't just change people, it changed history. And that was Nelson Mandela.
Ah, okay, I see what you're saying.
And that was after he left the Specials. In fact, the Nelson Mandela record, even though it's credited to the Special AKA, it is not a Specials record.
So that name was just used for publicity?
That's right, it's a Jerry Dammers record.
That's interesting. So, and you feel that was a direct response of, a direct result of his ability to express his own opinion, be a creative individual, and basically, do something that he wanted to do rather than something that he had any reason to believe was financially viable.
Yes. In other words, like a lot of people, he told the music business no, and he walked away from it.
Well, like I said, the thing that leaves me quite interested here is, where does this leave you? Because obviously we've now got this huge swelling of like big singles, big names, big money. All this is floating around. Obviously, you're at this time you're a relatively small name, but you're someone who's really got your hands in all the pies. What happens to you?
I gave up.
I mean, you literally just sort of stepped back from it all. You felt disenfranchised, or not disenfranchised, like disheartened.
It disgusted me.
Yeah.
I was at a gig in Camden Town, the Electric Ballroom, and the Specials were on the bill, Madness, and somebody else, can't remember who they were, some girl group. And the place was full of skinheads, doing their skinhead thing. I understood that was in fact part of the whole two-tone thing, but it was a fashion thing. It wasn't a political thing.
Yeah.
And the more the evening went on, the more I saw that the political thing was getting the upper hand. And I thought, no, I don't want to be part of this. I know where this is going. I don't want to be part of it because I see that Jerry's getting more and more dispirited as time goes on. And this, he understands that it's not his dream. Not anymore, anyway. But it was the crowd that were there that made me think, no, this is not what I think it is. And so it turned out to be. The Specials split apart kind of almost immediately after that.
Do you think they felt the same thing that you did?
Yeah.
Do you think that they noticed that as well when they looked out on the crowd? Or do you think there was other factors?
No, I think there are definitely other factors, social ones, familial ones. You know, they all had their reasons for being, you know, who they were.
Okay, so let's take them out the picture for a while anyway, because I mean, I think we get a fair image of what's going on with them. So, I mean, what kind of interests me here is that, and I think this would interest most people, is more the situation regarding yourself. So you've worked your way up through music in a very honest way. You know, you've been invited into doing DJing. You've slowly got into like getting more involved. You've got to know artists, and you've got all the way up to the point of being part of something very big, only to be faced with the monster of, you know, the industry that didn't exist when you first got into music is now here and it's rearing its ugly head. And so you back away. You back away from this thing that, you know, no one really had noticed it existed perhaps so much before, but now you can see it in full focus. Now, obviously, that's not the end of the story for you.
And when you say I backed, when you say I backed away, I closed I closed the door on it, and never wanted anything ever to do with it ever again.
So how? Because obviously, I meet you years after this. How did you become re-involved in music? What happened to turn you around in a way?
Again, I never stopped producing. I was always producing.
Because it was a love. It was a love.
It was a love. I spent almost all of the next, say, 10 years or so in little tiny 8-track, 4-track, you know, recording studios, basically making demos for people. And again, this taught me a lot. This taught me how to work with very limited resources.
Yeah.
Try doing, you know, a kind of multifaceted track on a 4-track. Incredibly difficult, but you learn to kind of work around things.
Yeah. You learn to be more creative with your solutions.
Yes, and all of that helped me for the next phase of what I was doing. And the next phase that I was doing was just coming along at the right time, which was music on computers.
And when did you get into music and computers? When would you pinpoint that moment where you made that transition?
88 or 89.
So you were very early to the party with that.
Oh yeah. I first discovered the internet in America because I was living in America between 1980 and 1990.
Yeah.
So I started seeing these things like America Online, and I'm thinking, what the fuck is that?
You get swept up with AOL rather late.
And I wasn't particularly interested in the AOLs of this world, because to me that was, you know, that was the same business I'd already walked away from.
Yeah.
But I was interested in the open source side of it.
Okay.
So one of the things that I first started doing was, there was no internet when I first started doing this. There were these things called bulletin boards.
Yeah.
And they were individual sites that held specific kinds of information.
We talked about this. Yeah.
So I knew that, you know, if I wanted to learn how to make music on the computer, that I would have to learn certain disciplines about how to do that.
Yeah.
So I taught myself how to write mods. Do you know what that is?
Do you mean mods for like software mods?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The difference then, back then, is that they were mods that created music.
It's somewhat like VSTs are now, but in a slightly different light.
Well, in a slightly different light, because to be honest, it was much more scientific than anything else.
As programming
you had to learn how.
Days, yeah.
You had to learn how to program. Yes.
Yeah.
So I taught myself how to write mods. And for about 3 years, I was part of what most people refer to as the mod scene.
The new mod scene.
At the time, it was really quite big, and it was international. So you'd hear people from, every other country in the world that were making mods. And some of them were just fucking awful. But some of them were really good. And it impressed me how you could get that kind of quality from something that was basically no more than 8 bits.
If I could just, I mean, there's a couple of things I want to say about this, but first of all, I just want to give you the opportunity to explain, because this is something that is not widely known about. I mean, what would you explain? How would you describe software musical modding to people who maybe are not familiar with this use of technology?
Let me go through the process.
Yeah.
So the first thing that you had to do was you had to find individual one-note samples.
Yes.
Once you found those individual one-note samples, you put them in a mod player. I used Fast Tracker.
Yeah.
And you use the code to modify and enhance the way that those notes played.
Yes.
And when they played. So somebody who was good at modding were able to do things in 8-bit that were just impossible. You couldn't possibly be. I mean, these people were pioneers in sound.
Yeah.
And some of the best are well known today because they built their strength from the mod scene.
So effectively, what we're talking about here is we're talking about the programming of music. Just to, like I say, just to use maybe a more generic term, it's programming music into
on the computer.
Yeah, but before there was a framework, before there was software
so
where you could MIDI things, this was actually programming the sounds to occur at the right times in the right tone.
Yes, but there were also collaborative groups that did the same thing, and they'd share the honours between them.
Yeah.
But because I'm kind of like an individualist.
Yeah, I can't imagine you sharing. Myself. I can't imagine you sharing.
No, I don't. I only work with people that I feel that I have a certain affinity with.
Yes.
And because it's the only way it ever works for me. Because otherwise, I don't show sufficient interest in the.
Oh, you've cut out, Steve. You might have to call me back. You just had to pop and disappear. There it is. All right, so carry on. So you're talking about
now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So artists of interest.
So anyway, I spent 3 years producing basic mods, and I must have released, I don't know, 300 or so. And obviously in that time, I got people to know me and to understand what I was doing. Yeah. And I actually have a lot of my audience these days are people that came from that time.
Because they saw your own expression primarily.
Yes, as well as the people that were into me the first time round when I was actually making records.
Yeah.
So my audience, whatever that is, whatever you kind of like to think about it is a combination of took 3 different phases of my life.
Well, this is what I want to get onto because
along with the mods, what I was doing was I was making mods, but I was also reviewing other people's mods. Yeah. And that's what turned into the whole reviewing thing, which is where I first met you.
Well, this is the thing.
And up until that point, when I first met you, I'd been reviewing online for like 12 years.
Well, I mean, this is where I'll probably bring my own personal experience into this a little bit, because this is the interesting thing. Now, I got into using the internet for sharing music. Is in 2002. I was in a band who it actually was really weird. I mean, considering in 2002, it's hard for people to think of that very specific period of time because so much about information technology and the internet has progressed very quickly. It's hard to really look at a microcosm of time so clearly. However, in 2002, we're talking about a time when, still most people don't really have the internet at home. Dial-up is the order of the day, these sorts of things. And I had made friends with some people in America, in small town North Carolina, and I ended up going out to visit them. And first visit was really fun. Second visit, we decided, all right, 2002, let's record a record. So we're in the back of our old hardware store, and we record this record, and it's insane, but it's really creative. It has its moments of cleverness, its own moments of complete banality. However, we do this, and we're like, yeah, this is really good. We're enjoying this. So we've like, how do we share this with the world? And we found a website which is now, well, they've tried to upgrade it, but it's basically dead. A website called SoundClick, not SoundCloud, SoundClick, which was the original music sharing forum. It was alongside MySpace at the time, but SoundClick was taken more as the serious musical equivalent to MySpace. So anyway, we started.
Yeah, SoundClick was the musician's site.
It was the serious
most people who are on SoundClick weren't on any other sites.
Yeah, well, if they had a MySpace, it was just for their friends. It wasn't so much taken as a serious thing. Yeah. So we did this. We shared our music. It did surprisingly well. We were really blown away by that. And so as a result, I stayed with it for a number of years. And they had like an international chart for various genres and subgenres. And we were doing okay. After that, I came back from America. As a lot of people know, I came back from America. I was a bit despondent in the UK. I got signed up to do some work in Japan. Went to do Japan. That's where I started producing my own music as well as music for other artists. And then I went from Japan like between 2006 and 2008, I think. Anyway, by the time I came back in late 2008 to early 2009. And it was around about that point, I was like, well, okay, look, I was feeling a bit despondent. There'd been like the financial crisis had put pay to things like living abroad and stuff like that, and it affected my savings, various things. Sorry, my phone keeps on going off. I have to shut it up.
Bad.
Yeah, I've muted it. Don't worry, it's muted now. But the point is that I came back and I thought, well, look, I need to focus on just the quality of the music I'm working on. Where's a good place? So I went across to SoundClick. There was a forum that I hadn't noticed in all the years I've been on there. The 7 years I've been on there, I went on the forum. And I found this Critics Corner thing, of which there were certain people. There was the person who ran it, Larry. There was various reviewers. But there was this one name, that sort of breezed through once a month. Like sucked up like a Hoover, sucked up a few names, took them to one side, and then would delicately deliver these detailed reviews that would be shared both on the SoundClick forums and also on the Rebel Riffs website, which is still there, I'm blessed to say. And so, and that's where I first heard of you. You were this person who was already revered, this person that everyone kind of knew. I want, it's like you can get reviews, but I want a Steve Gilmore review. I want a Steve Gilmore review. And so I was like, well, look, I want someone to take seriously what I was doing. And so the first thing I presented to you, like I say, that song, He Stole My Gold, was a song that I'd done in, it was during the sort of Japan time. And it was done specifically with a sort of very mixed approach of, is this for the internet? Is this for a Japanese audience? It was kind of a mixture. It was very eclectic. And I was like, I want to hear what someone says who has no relation to me and is, not of the Japanese area that I've been working with, who's from the same area that I'm from, kind of, approximately. And you gave this really wonderfully interesting, detailed review that was very worldly and at the same time, really useful. And so I gave you a few more reviews. We got to know each other. We talked to more and more. And then it was when I was in London, I think it was in about 2012, 2013. So I was like, well, hey, we both live in London. Let's meet up. And thus we did. And that was a big sort of changing point for me. It meant a lot of things happened for me after that point that were, okay, I was never really at the same sort of level of success industry-wise that I had been at before. But it changed. My role in music changed a lot. And I think a lot of what I learned about production came from our conversations. So I'm kind of intrigued. So we're at this sort of 2009 phase. What was there a heavy thing, or was it just steadily that you fell into doing these like the SoundClick reviews and having your own review website? How did this all really come to be?
Well, I started, as I say, back in I guess 1990.
Yeah.
By reviewing the mods that I was hearing. And I always put them down as Rebel Riffs because Rebel Riffs was my mod band name.
I didn't know.
And of course, Rebel Riffs is what interested me more than anything else. I want to hear different. I want to hear rebellion. And by rebellion, I mean I want to hear people saying quite honestly and dramatically, no, I don't want to do that, I want to do this. And that just kind of snowballed. I got dragged into a site called EJ, which is where I met a lot of people who became very close friends.
Yeah.
And of course, EJ at the time had a massive audience. And I kind of walked into that because I was making mods that sounded like something that EJ did, you know. And then EJ themselves offered me the position of moderator of their forums. So it kind of inspired me to bring the reviews onto the EJ forums, which they really took off on. And that's when I started doing this whole monthly thing, where I'd suck, 40 tracks, and then review them through the month.
Yeah.
And after EJ went down the tubes, I went to SoundClick and started doing it there. And that is where it really took off. So all of a sudden, instead of getting, a few hundred views, I was getting hundreds of thousands.
Well, I remember even with not talking about the audience, just talking about the people, the artists. I mean, this is obviously we look at this as being a time where everyone is a bedroom musician, but let's just be clear here. We're talking about the early 2000s, where most people did not have the facility to record at home. It was not a thing. Touchscreen phones, not a thing. YouTube was that website that had just been created in 2005 that most people thought was just for putting pictures of people falling over in their gardens. We're talking about a time where these things are not a thing.
And people only just started listening to MP3s, 16-bit MP3s.
That's very true, actually.
This was very, very new at the time.
I remember the very first time I ever heard of MP3 was in my last year of school in 2002. Right after leaving school, I went to a visit like these people I said in America. And it was in that last year of school that someone introduced me to the concept of MP3, and I was so confused by the idea that you could have a whole song within 3 megabytes when I'd been so used to using my CDR drive to use WAV files that were 30 megabytes. I was like, how is this 10% of the size? There's got to be something really sickly wrong with it. So it was that we're talking about this time where MP3 was considered very new. So it is really important to point out, although this is only 15 years ago, this is a time when the idea of people producing music at home was not a big thing. And yet you were fighting off reviews with a bloody stick. I mean, you got to the end of every month and you were having to say people, no, too much. I cannot take on this number of reviews. That's the number of at-home musicians you were dealing with. And, them alongside people who professionally recorded songs who were giving them to you for review. And I think that's very important to point out because, the world develops so fast. 15 years is a long time in some senses and a very short time in other senses. And you were very much at a point where independent at-home recording was not a big thing. And yet you were the go-to guy. You were beating off reviews left, right, and centre. I say beating off in the most non-sexual way that I can.
And just think about some of the things that I had to review. You saw some things that I had to review.
There were some people who clearly had more money than talent.
Well, it's difficult in that position to be anything but constructive. Because if you say anything that's in any way negative about what they're doing and why they're doing it, then you run the risk of putting them off altogether.
But you did not shy away. You were not aggressive, but you told people when it was crap.
I absolutely did not want to do that. What I wanted to do was to show people that when you're making music, you make music by growing.
I think,
by learning.
Your reviews are always multifaceted. I'd say one thing that I probably try to do with what we've got here on YouTube, it's the same as what you did, is I never give 100% positive or 100% negative review. There is always, in the best review, there's always something that we need to say, well, maybe it's just me, or maybe it's not, but that could have been better. And in the most negative review, there's always something we could say, well, look, that is something that you didn't do awfully. You know, something you can build on. And I think that's something very much that you did that I certainly would say I had been influenced by a certain degree. So, yeah, no, I respect that very much, certainly very much. So what we're going to do here... Sorry.
The problem with reviewing is that people are giving you the right to trample all over their feelings.
But they don't want you to. They want you to tell them that they're wonderful.
Yes, but there are times when you just can't say that. Some of the hardest reviews that I've done have been for people that I admire, but don't particularly either like or understand their music.
Yeah.
For instance, case in point, Patrick Lou.
That's honesty. That's honesty, yeah.
I really like Patrick. I think he's got tremendous spirit. And the guy just doesn't give up. He's like the Duracell bunny, you know what I mean?
Duracell bunny, Patrick. Yeah.
And again, I admire shit like that, okay?
Yeah.
I admire somebody's ability to stick with what they believe and not be swayed by, you know, people telling them what to believe.
It's a degree of confidence, belligerence, and, you know, creativity.
Yeah, but it's also the most classic rock thing of all time.
Yeah, I do think Patrick Lou is the most perfect example of your bedroom celebrity, your bedroom star.
Yeah. Fuck off, I don't care.
Yeah. Exactly.
If only 7 people know me, then that's 7 people that know me.
Yeah.
And I'm fairly certain that now Patrick's in a position where his audience is fairly solid. It might not be big, but it suits Patrick. And that's basically all he wants. He knows that he'd never be, you know, a world famous star. He knows that, and he doesn't care. What he cares about is making music that he loves.
I think that is what's most endearing about him and people like him, is I think people have now come to realise that being a celebrity is not the be-all and end-all, and it's not even always a possibility. You might just not cut that particular grade. However, there will still be people who want to hear what you do, and it's not so much about hitting a certain grade or a certain level as finding people who enjoy the output that you are going to create for your own pleasure. I think that's
well. The other thing is that the reason that I love these people that stick to their guns is because usually they're making the most interesting music.
That's very true.
You know, music that is at the same time as, you know, the one thing that we all require from music is the peace of music.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, we also want to be inspired and taken elsewhere.
You can feel what someone puts into a song. You can feel in the output. You can feel when something's got soul.
And I believe that if you're a good reviewer, that you point that out.
Yeah.
This is your strength. These are your main allies in what you're doing.
What we're going to do here.
And try not to concentrate on the things that you know are wrong.
I think what we're going to do here, though, is because I think this is a beautiful segue to... We've agreed we're going to do this as a 2-part interview, because I think here we've really nicely presented the case for what we both think about music, about your experience in music, what we've both learned, how we've met each other. So in the next part, we're going to come back and do a second part to this, where we're going to talk about some contemporary Japanese music. I'm going to give you some pieces to listen to that you're going to give some honest comments on, that you're going to thrash into as only you can. And
I have to leave it for a couple of days, though, because obviously, you know, my working. If I'm going to be listening to tracks I've never heard before, I want to live with them.
Exactly, yeah. We're alike on that.
Which means that I'm going to spend some time with them. And that, you know, obviously depends. But obviously the second part is, I'm kind of looking forward to it. It'll be an interesting experiment.
So I'm going to... Sorry.
But before we go, let me just make a final point.
Yeah.
The problem with people that, you know, believes that they should be rock stars, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay? It's a wonderful dream, but it is just that. It's a dream. It's never going to happen, not anymore.
That world doesn't exist now.
It doesn't. And the only thing that you can hope for is to get through to as many people as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can do that in this world is to build your own audience. And I've spent my entire life building my own audience. And to me, that's the most important thing of all. I don't care whether I get fucking 90,000 plays on a record or one. It's not important. What's important is that I'm actually talking to the people who like what I'm doing. But to bring this to its conclusion, I've seen both sides of this fame job, okay? I've seen fame as it actually is, and I've seen fame how people perceive it to be. And I know what I'd choose given the chance. I'd choose not to be famous, because famous is a pain in the ass. You have no privacy, you have no social life, everything is work, and if you don't watch where you're going, it sucks you in and then kills you.
I think that this is kind of a message that... I mean, it feels so outdated that people are obsessed with fame. It feels so outdated, especially in the modern world. And yet it still feels like something that persists.
Yeah.
And it would be nice if more people knew that it was a fiction. It would be nice if more people could see that side and be at comfort with the fact that it's not required. You know, you can go online, you can find people like you, you can find your audience more easy these days, and you can just get the people who are going to support you and play to them.
But what you're talking about here is people's dreams. And people should dream big. If they want to change the world, then that's what they should dream about. And hopefully at some point they'll have the tools to be able to do that.
And but at what point should they understand that they... What point should they understand their dream has maybe become unrealistic?
Well, yeah. Pretty much as soon as you become famous. Remember... No, don't laugh. Remember, I've seen it from both sides. And that finishes the instant you become famous. All of a sudden, your life is not your own.
Yeah.
And you realise what you've actually paid for that particular dream.
Well, that's true, but I think there is a modern view on that it is interesting to think of the fact that so many people want these things. I guess now more people want to be a YouTube celebrity than they do want to be a signed record star, but it's the same thing. You know, you have to be realistic about what is the line at which your dream has crept over into a degree of unrealisticness, and at what point do you just have to be happy with being yourself?
But that's the same with all fashion dreams of all kinds, of all stripes. Not everybody can be the next whatever it is. Most of us have to spend a life of normality. Yeah. And, you know, the only thing that I think you should dream about in this day and age is dream how to change the world.
I think that's a beautiful way to round this one off. Steve, it has been an absolute pleasure. I'm going to pop the stop on this one and we can talk a little bit after the recording's finished, but I just want to say a big thank you just for anyone who's watching this. Me and Steve will be back to do a part 2 of this interview. We'll record it in the next few days, but as always, we record these long in advance, so probably expect us maybe next week or afterwards. And in part 2, me and Steve will be listening to some contemporary Japanese music that I'm going to give him without labels, so he has nothing to work on but the sound coming through his headphones or speakers. And then we will talk about that and a few more things. But I really hope you've enjoyed it, guys. As always, from Japan, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you soon. Please come back for part 2 of this interview. If you've made it through to the end of the video, then I'm sure you will. Enjoy more of the content. As always, like, subscribe, comment, all the usual things. Get on our Discord, all the other social medias linked in the description below. And until I see you soon on the next video, for now, gracias and ciao, ciao.